Hey developers, so today we're going to look at the Quasar Framework, which is a high-performance Vue.js user interface framework. It has a lot of really cool features, so we're going to discuss it. We're also going to just create a quick app, and I'll need your guys' help, so make sure you watch all the way to the end, and you'll learn all about it. Hey, and if you don't know, my name is Eric. I'm a full-stack software developer. I'm also the author of the Vue.js in Action book, and I'm pretty much a huge Vue fan, but I also love Angular and React too. So if you like those things, make sure you click on that subscribe button and like the video. That really helps me out. And also, by the way, I'm doing a Vue 3 composition API mini course. If you go to vuecourse.tech, you can learn all about it. It's actually in the link in the description below if you go to www.vuecourse.tech. And then if you do, I'll give you a free cheat sheet. And I'll let you know when this new course is out, which it'll be kind of a fun little course. All right, so Quasar Framework. I got a lot of requests from people wanting me to look this framework over, do a tutorial on it. There's a lot of interest out there, so which is cool. They actually do have a few video tutorials right on their homepage. So if you go to quasar.dev, they already have a few up. I haven't watched them. 2 of them are in Spanish, and 1 of them is in English. So there's that. Now, if you don't know what Quasar is, they describe it in the introduction to Quasar as a MIT licensed open source Vue.js based framework, which allows a web developer to quickly create responsive plus websites. And what's cool about Quasar, and different than like Vuetify and other like material design type frameworks, is this one has a lot of cool features to create one app, but then be able to deploy it as a single page app, as a server-side rendered app, SSR, so you guys are probably familiar with Nuxt, things like that, like Nuxt, like does server-side rendering, or Next. But this one has it built in. You can also deploy it as a PWA right out the box, and something that you don't see too often, you can create mobile apps out of it and also Electron apps. So you can create like basically desktop apps and mobile apps, and it's really easy to do, and you don't have to install a ton of plugins. So to get started, you can look here. There's actually 3 different ways you can get started with Quasar, and they actually have a little handy dandy getting started guide here. So you can either kind of just use it as like a script tag inside an app already, and you can certainly do that. Sort of like you can just throw a Vue.js tag in any sort of HTML file and add Vue to your app, to your website. You can also use the Quasar CLI, which I'm going to show you guys later how to use. And then you can also use Vue CLI 3 plugin. So it seems like there is some advantages and disadvantages of all 3 of these. Like, for example, Vue CLI 3 plugin, it says you can build SSR and Electron apps, but there's a little star next to it. And if you read this, it says that they're not tightly integrated with Quasar as much as the Quasar CLI, and so you may have some issues. So that kind of makes me think that if I really wanted the full features of Quasar, I probably should just use the CLI. And the CLI is like basically using the Vue CLI. You create everything using the CLI, and it sets everything up for you, and it has some powerful features, and it has ways you can like quickly get your Electron app up and running, or create a spa up and running, or create a SSR version up and running, or PWA. So I think that's the best way to go if you're just looking to use some of the other cool like Quasar components, sort of like if you're going to use it more like you're using Vuetify. So you're just looking at the neat layout and grids and the Vue components, then it's probably fine to use the Vue CLI with the plugins. But it looks like if you want the full power, the Quasar CLI is the way to go. Although, if you've used Quasar, I'd love to hear. If anybody's used Quasar, leave a comment below. Let me know how you guys liked it, and if you ran into any problems using it, and if you've used it with Vue CLI or did you use the Quasar CLI. I'd love to hear that. So you can see here there's tons of different components that come built into it, like carousels, banners, badges. It also has its own, a bunch of its CSS tags, classes that are built in that you can use. It sort of feels like using Tailwind. That way you can actually do your whole layout. It has Flex, of course, built in. So you can use like column, just put .col as your class names, and you can really easily create your own columns. And then they have a layout builder if you even want to, create your whole layout here and then export it out, which I think is funny. There's just tons of different layouts and grids, and we'll take a look at a little bit of that. So let's start with this Vue, the Quasar CLI, which I think is probably the easiest way to go. And what I'm going to do in this demo is we're just going to kind of get used to installing Quasar, kind of taking a look at some of the components. But I really want to make this a multi-series, multiple videos, and I need your help with what video I should do next. So this will be a sort of an introduction, but if you guys really like this, I want to make another video, and we're going to deep dive into more of this, because there's so much to Quasar. Like this video could easily be like 3 hours long, but I want to keep it much shorter for you guys. So to install the CLI, if you go to the Getting Started Quasar CLI, and you just need to use npm install tac-g Quasar CLI, so something like this. My keyboard's a little clicky, so I apologize in advance. npm install tac-g, and then Quasar CLI, like that. And that'll install it. And then you can use Quasar create and create a project. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have Visual Studio Code open here and just have the open terminal. So Quasar create Quasar demo. You can see here, it'll open up this installer here, and it's going to ask us a few questions, like what do you want to call it, demo, project description, author, of course it's me. You can choose between Sass and Sass with CSS or stylus. I don't know. This is fine, SCSS. And then you can auto import and use Quasar components and directories, slightly higher compile time, next to minimize bundle size, most convenient. Manually specifies what to import. Import everything. So I just take the recommended one, auto import and using Quasar components and directives. You can do that inside the configuration file. I'll show you guys how to do that. And then it asks you what features. I mean, this looks pretty similar to Vue CLI 3. Do I want eslint, Vuex? I don't know. Maybe I'll do Vuex and Axios. I'll leave off IE11 support for now and internationalization. And ask me what kind of eslint presets I like. I don't know. I like prettier, so I'm going to set that. And this is kind of neat. You can actually create Cordova apps through Quasar, and it even asks you when you build it, like, what do you want the capacitor ID to be. I'm just going to leave it default for now. And then it asks you, do you want to use yarn, npm, or I'll handle that myself. I'll just use yarn. And then this will just take a few moments, and it's going to create the directory structure for us, and we'll take a look. Cool. All right, so it looks like everything is up and running and installed. So we can go to change directory to Quasar demo, and then run Quasar-dev, because I already have the Quasar CLI installed. And that'll go ahead and just run everything up, and it actually, I believe it opens up a Chrome window or your web browser window, depends on what your default is. And it should open up here in 1 second. Cool, here it is. So this is what you get out of the box. Just kind of gives you links here to the demo, the documents, the Discord channel. So if you need some help, jump on Discord channel. Forums, Twitter. I mean, there's so many things that Quasar is doing. And it has this little option here to close and open it. So if you look at the Quasar CLI installation, that's it mentions to you about how to install it. And I just want to mention one thing too. If you go into the playground under Getting Started, so if you want to follow along at home, I highly recommend click on the Code Sandbox link, which I should make everything a little bit bigger. Yeah, you click on the Code Sandbox link, and that'll open up the Code Sandbox, and it has the full IDE there. You can then go in and just play around with it. And so that way you don't have to install the CLI and install everything, just to kind of follow along with this demo that I'm doing today. So yeah, make sure you check out the Code Sandbox. So let's take a look at our directory that I created. So here's the Quasar demo. So you can see here I have a source folder, And in the source folder, I have our CSS, which we chose SCSS. And here is our variable. So this is kind of the look and feel that comes out of the box. So here's the primary, secondary, accent, positive, negative, info, warning. A good thing I like to do is if you go into the official documentation and go into style and identity, there's actually a theme builder. So if you want to kind of add in your own looks and feels, you can change the primary, change it to gray. Maybe you want the secondary color to look, maybe you want it more red. So once you kind of figure out like the color scheme that you want with all your positives, because you'll be using, anytime you use these CSS classes or you add your own buttons, you'll have these color schemes. You click export here and it gives you all the hex for it. So you can just copy and paste this directly in to your CSS Quasar variables. So you basically overwrite these with the ones you get from your theme builder. And that's what I always like to do. As soon as I start, I always change the default look, the default colors, because I want my own colors. And yeah, I just grab them out of here, which would be this SCSS. I'm not gonna do that right now, but that's something I would recommend to start off with. Then this is where you keep your components. And the components, this has a default layout. This is the layout here with the toolbar that we had at the top. The drawer, that's the word I was looking for earlier. Like this is the drawer to open, close it. And you have this queue list. So there's a bunch of different custom components that are built in. Now, if you look at the we'll kind of skip forward here. If you look at the Quasar conf.js, this is the default look and feel of it. And let me see here if I have prettier. It actually tells me we might get these squiggly lines because I'm using Visual Studio Code. Actually, before this demo, I didn't change it. If you go into VS configuration and you look at the standard eslint rules, it tells you what you should turn on if you use prettier eslint rules and what plugins to install. I didn't do this, so we might have, okay, there it goes. Actually, I have, it defaults to single quotes, but I have my prettier set up for double quotes. So when I saved it, it auto-formatted everything for me. But if I wanted to set up the right way, I would probably go in here and do this. So this is the way to set up, like the auto fix on save, language, prettier eslint, default formatter. Anyways, one thing to look for inside this Quasar conf file, if you look at the top here, let's see here, if we look in, I think there is a section for what we have installed. Yeah, components, directives, plugins. So if we wanted to have certain plugins or directives, we would go ahead and add them inside there, which we could do, which we'll do later. Okay, so we can have these pages here. Pages are basically just normal components that we can have. You can hold a lot of information inside them if you want. It depends on how you want to set up your app. If you go to the router file, you can see inside the router file here, this is how we set up our routes. So it's pretty normal. This is actually using lazy loaded routes. And you can see here's the children. So let's say we wanted to create another child. So we can easily do something like this. Just grab this, copy it. And then instead of having it path equal there, we'll do path, I don't know, /Erik. And we'll make a pages called Erik.view. And we'll just go ahead and create that page. So I'm going to create a new file, Erik.view. And we'll do a vbase here. Just do an h3 hello from Erik. We'll save it. And we'll look at our Quasar framework here. So if we do /Erik, there it is, hello from Erik. So perfect. Then we can also, like I said, we have our router. which we have this index route, which I wouldn't even change. But if you look at the routes, this is where the routes is. And then we have static files we can add in here. And then I added the Vuex store, which it goes ahead and gives you some module examples of how to get modules installed. So we're not going to look at that. So in our pages here are Erik.vue. Let's see if we can add in some examples from our code here. So I'm just going to add a couple in to take a look at it. So first thing is we can probably look at, let's look at a component. So let's take a look at a banner. So fortunately, the credit card did not go through, dismiss, so you can create banners like this. And one thing I like to do when I'm just testing stuff out, I just click here and just copy and paste some of the code. So here is a banner right here. So I'm going to just add it in here and see what happens. So I'm going to look back at Quasar. Yeah, here's our banner. Dismiss, update, credit card. Pretty neat. We can even open it up in GitHub if we want, or look at the code pen of it. Here's one that says you have lost internet connection. So if we look at all three, I guess I can add all three of them in here. Let's take a look here. I'll just delete all three here. And I'll save it. Yeah, cool. So yeah, it looks exactly like it does an example here. So I can kind of play around with it. One thing you might need to do, so if you go into like chip here and you look at the installation, sometimes you'll need to actually add the component. So like here it says components QChip. So to do that, what I do is go into that config file, that Quasar conf, and then go into that components again. And then you just add it in there like this. And then once it's in there, you should be able to use it. So if we go back to here, here's a chip example. Let's just copy and paste some of the code in here. I'll do that. Go back to our Erik view. And let's just put it right under this one. Let's do this. And Quasar up. Cool. So here's our chips. Seems to be working okay. You could see here the way it works. By the way, this QPAMD, QGutterMD, this is all the built-in classes to do the layout and formatting. It sort of looks like Tailwind CSS. It might even be running some Tailwind CSS underneath, but it has this Q dash, so it's definitely not Tailwind. And then use this Q dash chip to do everything. And by the way, I got a lot of squiggly lines here. It's just a weird issue with eslint, which I'll have to configure in my next video, but for now you can get the idea. Directions, bookmarks, emails. Okay, so we got all our chips in here. Hello from Erik. Let's take a look at one more. Let's take a look at some of the buttons that we can get with it. Once again, make sure I have the Q button installed here. So I'll go back to my comp file and I'll add the chips. I'll add in Q button. And then I'll just try out some of these buttons here. This is where the colors come in mind that we had set up earlier. So we go back to my Erik.vue. And I can just paste them right here. And if I take a look here, now I have, if it gives me an error, it might be, let's see what it's doing. Oops, site can't be loaded. Let's see here, invalid selector. Let's take a look what we are missing here. Q button. We'll just Control C it and restart it. Okay, I actually just stopped and restarted the server. Cool, now we have all our buttons at the bottom. They all seem to work. Let's take a look at, for this video, we're going to end it here, but I'm going to show you real quickly. One thing you can do, if you look at the official documentation, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can, actually, let me see here. I believe it's actually not at the bottom. when we're Quasar CLI deploying, here it is. So you can deploy as a SPA. So when we did quasar.dev, we're just running it as a single page application. And one way you can tell is if I look at this Vue source here, I just have this normal HTML, and then I have this div ID QApp, and this is where it's getting bootstrapped all in the source. It's running the JavaScript and adding everything. But if we wanted to run it differently, we can look at the official documentation, and if you go to developing SSR, that's a single server-side rendered, you can actually deploy it using SSR. So configuring it, so essentially if we just want to test it, we can just do quasar dev-m-ssr. So if I clear this and I run it, now it's going to run it in SSR mode, and it's going to do everything for us. And it's actually, if you look over here, I'll close these, it creates a new SSR source folder where it kind of has some configuration inside of it. And see, now it's opened in SSR mode, which if I go to Erik here, here's the information. This is just the different components we were testing out. If we look at inspect here, actually view source, you can see now it has all the details. So basically it sent this all down on the initial load. So it's much quicker because it has all that server-side rendered goodness built right in. So that's one of the cool things about using Quasar, is that just with one simple command, we can go ahead and set up for SSR mode. And we could even, if we wanted to, that was just configuring it, but we could just build it for SSR mode as well if we want to do that. So that's all I'm going to show you today. That was just a few components. I want to see and hear from you guys. Tell me what sort of components you want me to do in the future. What features are you guys interested in? I'll do my next video. I'll create a small little app using Quasar, and then I'll show you how I can connect to like a third-party API and then display the information in like a table or using one of these Quasar components, because there is so many. Maybe we even use a directive too. Like they have a carousel. They have their own image, so you can set your images. They have like lists, so you can easily set different lists. They have a markup table. So yeah, so there's so many different things. I'd love to hear what you guys want me to do next. If not, stay tuned, and I will go ahead and show you guys a little bit more in the next video. Thanks.